today is Peter Belmonte. Peter has been involved as a military officer, U.S. officer, and retired now. But he's interested in military history and especially the history of soldiers in World War I, and he has focused on Calabrian soldiers in World War I, and he has a couple of really good books on the subject, and he's got an Arcadian book on World War Italians in World War II, is it?
Two.
And a very important aspect of gaining legitimacy in a culture is for members of the ethnic group who have served in the armed forces and deserving respect of the rest of the community and service. And that really worked for Italian Americans, especially in World War II. So we'll go to Peter. Tell us a little bit about yourself and then about your work. And I believe you've got a show and tell for us. And I'm really interested in that. I love slides. And everyone knows that we're recording this to upload onto YouTube. And we have created a collection of about 20 different recordings up there from I think a blue ribbon list of Italian Americanists. Peter?
Thank you, Dominic. Excuse me. And I also want to thank you for inviting me and Casa Italia for hosting this and for the technical, the people doing the technical aspects also. I thank everybody for that. And also want to thank Dominic. Many years ago, I met Dominic in one of the AHA conferences, and he encouraged me to write for Arcadia, something hadn't crossed my mind to do, and I did that, and one thing led to another, and I've continued to write. So I thank Dominic for kind of getting me started with that.
Yeah, over the years, I've made enough to go out to dinner every year from Arcadia.
Yeah, I was gonna say this. I make enough to keep me working at a real job. So, but before I actually get into my presentation, I know we have a lot of people interested in Calabrian immigration in Calabria. I have been studying Calabrian immigrants in World War I who served in the U.S. military. And I started branching out, go a little further, and I found people, men, of course, at this stage, only men, who were Calabrian immigrants who served in the Civil War, only one so far, but I did find him. And in the so-called Indian Wars out west, there was a man who served in the 7th Cavalry from Calabria. That's the infamous Custer's regiment. He served afterwards. He wasn't that little bighorn. And people who served all the way up through the Spanish-American War in the Philippine insurrection or Philippine War, all the way up through and including World War I. So that's something I can talk about if people would like to have more questions about that. In fact, there, if you can see, that's the priest who was a Calabrian immigrant who served in the Civil War. Oh. I have him framed up there. I don't know. But anyway. I gave a similar presentation at Casa Italia 2 years ago, but this is going to be different. That one focused on the sad topic of casualties. But today we're going to maybe be a little bit more uplifting, I guess. And we're going to talk about Calabrians who were decorated. So let me see if I can share my screen.
Okay, we're waiting. Oh, there it is.
There we go. How's that? Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
All right, let me go back there. So Calabria's, Chicago area's Calabrians who were decorated during World War I. And there's the two decorations in question. On the left, as you're looking at it, is the Distinguished Service Cross. On the right, a Silver Star. I'll talk a little bit more about those as we go along. There's a disclaimer, why study Italians? Well, I don't think I have to really explain that to this group, but they were a large, very large ethnic group, probably the largest national immigrant group to serve in the U.S. military during World War I. And there you
You're
see the
talking about
estimates.
World War One.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we often hear that about World War II, but this is
Yes.
new to me. You need to share your sources with me.
Yes,
Of the quality.
okay, yeah, it's I would say more anecdotal. The the U.S. military at the time, they certainly kept track of where their soldiers were born, but to my knowledge, they were never tabulated. So many were born in Ireland, so many in what have you. But when you look at Italians, they seem to be predominant. Now, we're talking about people born in Italy. Obviously, there were more German Americans and Irish Americans and older immigrant groups. But as far as the immigrant groups, national immigrant groups, I get the sense, and I've not seen anything to contradict it, that the Italians were probably the largest. There were a lot of Russians, a lot of Greeks, a lot of Poles, and people counted them in different ways. I've seen Polish people counted as German, Polish people counted as Russian.
Oh, yeah.
Some estimates say about 400,000 Italians. I think it's a little less than that. Again, I'm going anecdotally, just looking through rosters and things like that.
You mean where
I
they
focused
were
on Chicago.
born? We're talking where they were born, and not
Yes, where
Italian
they were born.
names?
Yeah. Yes, correct. Where they were born. Yeah. Of course,
Okay.
many in this study you're going to see were born in Chicago.
Okay.
All right, I will go down here. Why focus on Calabrians? Well, my ancestors made me do it. Okay, Chicago area. I define that as roughly today's Chicagoland, from Kenosha County down around Lake County, Cook County, Lake County, Indiana, and just the surrounding Chicago area. And Calabrians, I define men whose origins were in Calabria. Some were born in the United States. 3 provinces at the time: Cosenza, Catanzaro, and Reggio Calabria. Catanzaro has since been divided into 3, but it's all the same. It's all the same area, and we're talking about 3 at this time. Distinguished Service Cross, that was instituted in 1918. Before that, the Medal of Honor was the only real medal awarded that could be awarded to recognize heroism in the United States military. 1918, General Pershing wanted to create something to recognize acts of heroism that maybe were below, sort of a gradation of acts of heroism. And this is what was come up with. This was designed by Captain, let me get the name right, Captain Aymar Embury, and it was actually sculpted. That beautiful medal was sculpted by an Italian immigrant soldier, not immigrant, Italian soldier, Italian American soldier, Corporal Gaetano Cecere. Now, he was born in New York, and I am not sure where his parents came from. I don't think they were Calabrian, but he was actually later wounded in action. But that was he was an artist in service, and he sculpted that beautiful medal.
Oh, interesting.
About 6,300 of them were awarded during World War I, and I've come up with 11 Calabrians so far. As you can appreciate, I had to scroll. I'm scrolling through the 6,300 names. Every time I see something that looks like it could be Italian, I try to find out more about them. So 11 so far. It's probably under represented so far.
So are you
And
keeping
of
track
those
of
11,
the
5.
Italians? Are you keeping track of
I did
the
not. No.
Italians? Oh, you
You're
should.
just giving me more work to do. But that would be an interesting thing to do. There's got to be hundreds of them. I mean, 6,300. There's got to be maybe 10% Italian. I don't know. But going through them, there's a lot of them. And I found, like I say, 11 that I can determine were Calabrian. 5 of them were Chicago area Calabrians, all in the 33rd Division. Well, the 33rd Division was originally an Illinois National Guard, made up of Illinois National Guard units. In 1916, they were mobilized to the Mexican border for the Mexican border troubles. They came back in early 1917, were demobilized, and immediately called up for World War I. And so that's probably why so many of them, or only 5 known were from the 33rd, because so many of the Chicago area Italians served in that division. And there you see the breakdown of the regiments. Now I'm cheating a little bit on Corporal Vincenzo Caserta, because he is actually from Rend, Illinois, which is kind of closer to where I am. So I'm calling him an honorary Chicagoan. And he was awarded, and I wanted to read he was from Reggio Calabria, and I'll read these citations. For extraordinary heroism in action near Marcheville, France, November 10th, 1918, one day before the end of the war. Although wounded early in the attack, Corporal Caserta continued to lead his squad to its objective and refused to leave the field until ordered to do so by an officer. And so the attacks were pressed all the way up until 11 o'clock on November 11th. The 33rd Division was one of those divisions that continued almost up until the end, and Corporal Caserta was wounded the day before that. Sorry for the quality of some of these pictures.
Oh, no, I have it real on full screen. It looks good.
Good. Private Louis Cecilia, his name is actually Cecilia, which goes to show you on his draft registration, it's spelled correctly Cecilia, but he signed it Cecilia. So I don't know. But Cecilia is actually a common name, and Giuseppe DiBartolo can probably help me out with that one, but it's fairly common in that area, including my own family. But Private Cecilia was awarded for extraordinary heroism in action near Consenvoy, France, October 8th, 1918. While his company was being held up by machine gun fire, Private Cecilia crawled to a point within 10 yards of the nest and bombed out the enemy, where they came under fire from our guns and were killed. During the exploit, Private Cecilia was wounded by enemy bombs, and he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross and the French Croix de Guerre, which is another heroism award. This was during the Meuse-Argonne offensive, the last major push of the war during Marshal Ferdinand Foch's final push. And this is the sort of the American portion of that. It's the largest American offensive ever to that date. And I think it still qualifies as far as number of men engaged, et cetera. And you'll see a lot of these men were awarded it during this, naturally during the battle when many of them were engaged. He lived in Chicago. I don't have a picture of Private First Class Vincenzo Furforo. He also lived in Chicago, and he also was from Reggio Calabria. I think the man previously was probably from the province of Cosenza, but I could be wrong on that. I know Calabria for sure. Private Furfuro was cited for extraordinary heroism in action while serving with Company B, 131st Infantry Regiment during the Meuse-Argonne offensive, September 26, 1918. With 3 other soldiers, Private Furfuro charged and captured a battery of 3 77mm field pieces. Those are German artillery pieces.
Now, this was in
Which were
October.
protected by
This was
October.
and a month later, in November 11th, 1918. That's when the armistice was signed.
That's correct. So this offensive started September 26th, which is when this action occurred, and extended all the way until the armistice. So it was like a 45-day battle.
Yeah, I guess it's the phenomenon of one of the last people in the war to die that
Yes.
fascinates me.
Yeah, nobody wants to be that person.
Yeah.
And his deed enabled his company to continue the advance. Now, someone who, Sergeant Frank Prete, who's from Rende. So I think Giuseppe DiPardo is from Rende. So there's a fellow Rendese living in Chicago. He actually served in the National Guard before the war. I think the other gentleman enlisted right at the beginning of the war. Sergeant Prete was involved in the Guard before and actually went down to the border, served on the border, and then came back. He was decorated for extraordinary heroism in action near Bantheville, France, November 1st, 1918. Sergeant Prete 3 times passed through a heavy barrage and machine gun fire while guiding a combat train forward to an advanced artillery platoon.
Peter, do we
Yeah.
have any information on what brought them to, during peacetime, the National Guard? Why would an immigrant in Chicago join the National Guard, or what were the rules on language and citizenship in that time? Those are questions that come to mind for me.
The concrete ones I've heard so far is they wanted to serve their adopted country. That's the one I've heard from the Pellegrino brothers who served. They were relatives of mine, and I was fortunate to find a descendant of them, and they told me and they gave me a lot of information about them. At the time, I don't think National Guard service qualified for citizenship. Now, during World War I, in May 1918, they passed a rule that allowed, it wasn't automatic, you didn't automatically become a citizen, but it waived the residency requirement so that you didn't have to file a declaration of intention and then wait 5 years and that kind of thing. It basically said you're in the military. If you'd like to be a citizen, you may. You can waive the requirements. And many, not only Calabrians, but if you look through the lists, just hundreds and hundreds of Italians and obviously other ethnic groups availed themselves of that. And interestingly, some of those people, and I've documented a few of them, returned to Italy, in the case of Italians, returned to Italy and then lost their citizenship. The Department of State determined that they repatriated themselves and they were had another residence there and didn't intend to come back, and they lost their citizenship. But that's a minority compared to the ones that took advantage of this rule or this law and became citizens.
Okay, that's an interesting sidelight. I've not included that in my in any of my retelling of the history of Italians in Chicago. Just that the only information I've had is that there was a call from the consul general in Chicago asking Italians to go back to Italy and join the army there. And I think they offered free trip back home to join the meat grinder. Anyhow.
I think from what I understand, I've read that about 90,000 men did that. I don't know where that statistic comes from, but I think a great many did that. I don't know whether maybe been better off staying in the United States and joining, but I don't know.
Yeah.
One more DSC, Private Steve Zappa from Dwight, Illinois, which is, I guess, little southwest of Chicago. He's from Reggio Calabria also. At Chilpilly Ridge, August 10th through 19th, 1918. Now, this is a battle that this regiment fought under British command for this battle. Private First Class Zappa volunteered for dangerous missions, carrying messages over areas swept by heavy machine gun and shell fire. He displayed great courage in accomplishing each task. So each of these men made it through, not unscathed. A couple of them were wounded, but they lived through at least this part, and he survived the war.
And he's wearing the medal in that picture.
He is. He's wearing the medal. Let me see if I can go back to. Sorry, let me go back up. He's wearing the medal. There you see the medal in the
he's got
middle.
3 medals.
The one in the middle is a Distinguished Service Cross. The one to your right, as you're looking at it, is the French Croix de Guerre with palm. He earned it with palm, which is more, a bravery. The one on the left, I'm not sure. A lot of these men earned the Italian Croce de Guerra, which is, I guess, the War Cross. And that, I think that might be it. I don't have that he was awarded that, but that's what it looks like to me, that little snippet.
Yeah, my father won one of those, given in the 1980s. I think it was a participation medal.
Okay. I will go down to the Silver Star. This was instituted in 1918 to reward even lesser degree of heroism. What initially was awarded any man who was cited in general orders, typically at division or brigade level. They would cite a man saying that so-and-so was brave and did such and such. That entitled him to the award of a small silver star device. This medal that you're looking at was not in existence yet, but a small device. If you look at the center of that medal, you see that little silver star, and that was to be allowed to be placed on the metal ribbon of the service ribbon, which was going to be designed later to show that, yes, I served in the war, and look, I have this little silver device showing I was cited for bravery. In 1932, the Congress created this Silver Star medal. So men who were awarded that little device, Silver Star Citation Star is what they call it, could then exchange that for the award of the medal itself.
Yeah,
I know a lot of this is kind of esoteric military stuff, but number awarded, no one knows. There's not a list like there is with the Distinguished Service Cross. I had to scour unit histories. There is some database online that's, I don't want to say useless, but close. The 1st Division awarded more than 14,000, and they're actually recorded. You can find that online and in the museum in Wheaton, Illinois. What the 1st Division did was cite blanket citation for any in the division that was wounded or killed. And they cited 14,000 men out of 28,000. Division was about 28,000. So 14,000 more than that probably were killed or wounded. Each of those men were cited by name in a huge list, and that qualified them for the award of the Silver Star. Other men in the division were cited for blanket actions, like they participated in 2 or 3, and they did so to such a degree that would be normally expected of a soldier. They were cited, and other individuals were cited for a specific act. This person did this thing bravely and is cited. So all these taken together, all these orders, more than 14,000. The 2nd Division, and I'm just picking some that I had access to the totals, about 3,600. 82nd Division, about 436. It varied and depended upon the unit and the unit's leadership. So some people say, well, the 1st Division, they did these blanket things that cheapens the award. And to that, I say, I understand the point. But to you who say that, I say, you weren't there, they were. I'm not going to, question it. So we'll move on for that. 15 known, and I think this is undercounted. There's got to be more. This is all I could find. 15 known Calabrian, Chicago area. 1st Division, 11, 33rd Division, 4. 1st Division received a lot of transfers from men who were drafted from Kenosha. They were drafted from Kenosha in May, transferred to another base in June, and went overseas in July. And once they got to in early August, once they got to France, they were farmed out as replacements. So you see that from May to August, not a lot of effective training time, especially for perhaps an immigrant who maybe doesn't understand the language that well. Some of the men did, some were more recent arrivals. Very little time to adapt, and suddenly you're thrown into combat.
So they were still using people from the same town in the same unit, so that if something really bad happened, that would affect the community at home, or if something heroic happened, that and then also when they got back, they were a band of veterans who had served together and could form a social group or club or of some power or influence.
Yes, that's a good point. It was less marked now than it was in the Civil War, when entire regiments or companies were all recruited from a small area. Here, for example, let's look at the Kenosha example. A lot of men were drafted from Kenosha at the end of May. Huge draft, hundreds and hundreds. They all went to Camp Grant, which is in Rockford, Illinois, northern Illinois, and were all assigned to a unit. Now, we're talking thousands of people, but they're a small subset of a unit. And groups of them were then peeled off and sent. So as you can see, they're kind of getting smaller and smaller. A group was peeled off, about 2,500, sent north to Camp Custer, Michigan, and they went overseas, and they were further parceled out to different regiments in the division. that went overseas. But if you look at it, certain men from Kenosha did kind of stay together. If you look at the 26th Infantry Regiment in the 1st Division and the 18th Infantry Regiment, where Christine's grandfather was, also in the 1st Division. So you had that effect. You may not know men you were with, but you might know the guy next to you, but so let's look at some of these, and I've got way more info than you need here. I just wanted to highlight some of it. Luigi Barbieri, now he was cited by the commander of the 33rd Division. So he wasn't one of the blanket citations. I would love to see what he did for. I don't know. I just have his name. Pasquale Caravetta was tragically killed in action July 24th near Soissons. He was struck by a 1-pounder. It was a small, well, nothing's that small when you get hit by it. A small artillery piece, and he was killed instantly. And again, now because of that, I'm not saying he did not behave heroically. I don't know, but he was in one of those blanket citations. He was killed in action and then cited. Antonio Cerminara, there's another one, 26th Infantry Regiment. He was cited for not specific action, but for general gallantry during the Meuse-Argonne. There's sort of a hierarchy of 1st Division citations. I know this is all esoterica, but here's Christine's grandfather, Carmine Chiappetta, was wounded September 12th, 1918 during a San Miguel offensive. He was so badly wounded, he was struck in the top of the head, and he was reported as killed in action. And his wife, and I think the wife was living in Italy at that time, and child was reported to them that he was killed in action, and his brother in Kenosha. Later, one of the other men in the regiment saw him in a hospital and said, well, by golly, he's not dead. And so that was corrected. But if you look in the unit histories, he's reported as killed in action. And here you see his award. Let me get a drink of water. I'm sorry.
There are some Chiappettas in Chicago still. I've run into a couple of them. One is a cartoonist.
Oh, really? That's a very common name in Murano Marchesato. And maybe again, Giuseppe could tell us more about that. But here you see, this is a award card. You see where it's cited in GO1 1st Division. It gives his name. You see he's got his name wrong, Chiappote. Well, this was completely common. And even looking through this this list that's on the website of the division museum I was telling you about, you may never find a person. You could be your grandfather and you're earnestly looking. You may never find him. His name, in this case, his name is even transposed in the unit histories. You would think the unit histories would get it right, but it's transposed. You may never find. But there you see the award card for that. That's an example of what that looks like. It was created in 1925. So if you wanted to apply for it, they would have a record. There's a picture of him. The ribbon he's wearing is not the Silver Star, or I don't know what that is, but he's proudly wearing it. That's after he got home. And you can see on his left sleeve that chevron that shows he's honorably discharged and can wear his uniform for a time.
I apologize. It keeps kicking me out.
Oh, okay, I'll continue going. Giuseppe Covelli was badly wounded. He was also a paisan of Carmine Chiappetta, and he was shot through the neck. Covelli was shot through the neck and bayoneted in the side. Badly wounded during the Meuse-Argonne offensive. There he is on the right, none the worse for wear. He looks pretty good to me for those horrific wounds, but he suffered from headaches and problems, shot through the neck. And there's some more. Fanello. Giorno was another one. He was born in Kenosha, went back to Murano later, and then came back to the United States. Salvatore Greco, you see where I said 4 major campaigns. So he received a blanket citation for participating well, not just being there, but actually participating to the extent that he stood out in all 4 of the major campaigns that the 1st Division took part in. They were one of the toughest divisions, longest serving division overseas, and had probably as many campaigns as any other division, and suffered second to the 2nd Division the most casualties. Imbrogno, severely wounded at Soissons. There's another 33rd Division man, Midono. So he was not a blanket citation. I don't know what he did, but he was mentioned. Francesco Muto, another one of the paisans from Kenosha who all went together. And he received one citation for being wounded, the blanket citation, and another one for standing out during the Meuse-Argonne offensive. Luigi Napoli is another 33rd Division soldier. Pellegrino was killed in action. I don't know that I don't have it written here, but I don't have.
From Wilmette, huh?
Wilmette, yep. That's Napoli, and then Pellegrino's from Gary. Potesta was, excuse me, born in Chicago. His family was from Grimaldi, and he was living in Indiana Harbor at the time. He joined right after. He was one of the first to join after declaration of war, and was severely wounded at Soissons. Interestingly, side note, a lot of Grimaldese came to the United States and went out west very early, settling in Colorado, in Idaho of all places, in the 1880s, 1870s.
You think they were miners or railroad workers?
Railroad workers, and some in Idaho were farm workers, but I think they probably got their start on the railroad. And I know some were contractors, and I can't think of the name of the family, but they went under Walsh in, I think it was Guarashi or
big
something like
Walsh
that.
company in Chicago now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They're about the biggest around. Go ahead.
There's Potesta, Corporal Potesta.
Uh-huh.
And the last, Guilaciotti, with a nice name like that, cited by the 33rd Division. There's Antonio Giorno's, that's his award card, and you can see where it gives, that's kind of a general citation. He stood out during that phase. There's no notation to say he ever requested or desired to get the medal. Some guys maybe never heard. Some guys said, I just forget about it. What do I care? It doesn't matter to me. Who knows? But there you see Francesco Muto, and you see the number written in the upper right-hand corner, 44, I think it's 28. That shows that he was authorized, and you see the stamp down there, and he was awarded it. So he was sent to it. That number was engraved on the medal. And you could see the number next to it is a 28255. Those are the serial numbers of the soldiers. There's his second one. You see it says OLC, Oak Leaf Cluster. So in lieu of another medal, they didn't send him another medal. They give him a little cluster. Again, it's a small oak leaf that you would affix to the ribbon to show you have two. You have the medal and an award. That one was for being wounded, because you see the general orders number 1. I'm sorry for all this esoterica. This is a man who was a Calabrian, but it wasn't from Chicago, but I wanted to show something that might be appended to their service record. There you can see where it says he was cited in paragraph blah, 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 general order number 5. And below that, citation for gallantry in action, but not warranting any decoration. It didn't warrant a decoration, it warranted that little star that later allowed the man to transfer it to the decoration. That is, this is an example of the citation that a man would get from the General Orders number 1 of the 1st Division. This man is Lieutenant D.M. Kirkpatrick, but he's the only example of this I could find. And they would be given this nice little accolade as a souvenir and as a showing he was wounded in action there.
Well, how would people use these citations? Would they use them to when they applied for a job, or when they ran for office?
The big thing would be these probably not. These might have been more of a memento, but the discharge most definitely. And I have it, but it'd take too much time for me to find it and bring it up. But you can see copies of these discharge papers that were folded. You see the fold marks and the tape. They carry these things in their pocket to prove that they were a discharged soldier. And I even have a case of another Chicago area paisan, Luigi Bruno, who served in the Navy in World War I. He actually wrote to the Navy Department and said, I need to get another one, please send me a replacement. Mine is falling apart due to use. He kept it in his pocket and kept, I suppose, to do that, going to look for work. I'm a discharged soldier, you know, or what have you. So they were proud of it and they kept it with them.
Yeah, there was a lot of unemployment in 1919. 1919 was another kind of horrible year, like 2020, for maladjustment to the post-war economic and political situation.
Yeah, yeah, and men killed themselves. I have another record of another Chicago Calabrese who was badly wounded, and some of his family died in the epidemic flu, and he in 1920 was out of work, and I think he killed himself, but the death certificate says accidental asphyxiation, illuminating gas. But you know, who knows? And that's
Yeah.
the trouble adjusting. And of course, then unemployment in the 30s and the bonus march. These men were promised a bonus for the time served, and they weren't allowed to get it right away. And of course, they were petitioning to, I would like to get it now. I need it now. I don't need it in 10 years. I need it now. Of course,
Yeah.
the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, that was something of a cause
I
throughout
think,
the 20s, and then came to a culmination in the 30s.
and it's interesting the way they computed the bonus. I've seen the worksheets for some of these men where X amount per day in the United States, X amount per day overseas, that kind of thing. So, and a lot of states gave bonuses. Wisconsin gave a minimum, I think, of a $50 or $60 bonus. I think they got money right when they discharged too. I think a $50 or $60 bonus.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the end. There's two paisans from Kenosha. I don't know who they are, but they were in the packet of pictures with Covelli and Chiappetta. So they're good looking guys there. I don't know what the guy on the right there has got two chevrons. You see one on his left sleeve. That means he was overseas for at least 6 months. The one on his right sleeve, which you can just sort of see. I don't know if you can see my little pointer. That's a wound chevron. So he was wounded.
Well,
And that concludes the briefing. And I'd be happy to answer questions or
yeah,
clarify anything.
my basic question is, where did you get all this stuff? What is available?
Well,
You mentioned something about unit histories, and then we saw all these cards. How can I get access to some of them?
there's some of the unit histories all back in here. The cards, now, if you're looking for somebody from Wisconsin, you're in luck. Right to the Wisconsin Veterans Museum up there in Madison. I have a number I think you could probably just Google it. They are very responsive. And if you give them their name, they will send you a service card. Well, hold on a second. It might be easier just to show you.
Yeah, so that's important.
This here, that's a negative of the card. So this is a service card for a from that gives all the information about him. These were created at the end of the war. They used man's discharge, which listed his battles and all his units he was in. And they were then filed away at each state's adjutant general's office. So Wisconsin, you're in luck. New York, Pennsylvania, you're in luck. You go online, ancestry.com, bam, you're okay there. Some other states, Utah, online. You can get some of it from Missouri online. Illinois, you're out of luck. I had a point of contact there who was sending me them, and that dried up. So I don't know how to get. You probably can go to the Illinois Adjutant General's office in Springfield, but those were created for each discharged veteran, and some are online. Some you would have to write, and some who knows. I
You have to
also
be a relative of them to get the. You can just
No.
ask for it. It's public, totally public.
Yes. If you try for the National Archives, you might run into trouble. I usually say I'm a relative because I'm related to everybody from Morano Marquesato. That's what I tell them. But the records for the National Archives in St. Louis, I'm pointing to St. Louis, were burned, of course, in 1973. So World War I, World War II records mostly destroyed. But you still might be able to get something that will tell you his unit if you know nothing else. And sometimes you can get recreated and saved. I have beautiful copies of a guy who was born in Chicago, Calabrian, his father was from Calabria, his mother was from a different part of Italy. And his records came through, and he was wounded, and he talks about when he was wounded. And he was interviewed because he had epilepsy. He shouldn't have been in the service in the first place. But he had epilepsy, and he talks about that in there. So you might get lucky in something like that. Online, I tell you, you can get, if you're on Ancestry, you can look at the Army transport records. And they will
transport records?
Transport, yeah, the Army transport records. I wonder if I could, maybe I could show you an example. I don't know. Let me try here.
Okay, well, I'll try to carry, this is really important, I think, because again, we establish our right to respect by service in the military, and that's true in most societies, that an ethnic group or minority or whoever, and then the organizations that come after the war or whatever are also places where honor is bestowed.
Can everybody see that, what I have up there?
Let's see, I can see you, but now I have to click on that. Okay, I
Okay.
see that.
There's a passenger list for Company C, 131st Infantry, on the USS Leviathan, which was the Vaterland. It was impounded in New York from a German ship. Huge vessel, huge steamer. Then we used it as a transport. So
Okay,
there,
I
Germany.
can't see anything.
Yeah,
But,
Peter,
here you see-
you're still sharing your PowerPoint. Can you share your desktop?
Rats.
You might need to disconnect and come back in on your share.
I will do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is really important
want to-
stuff. And I think it's, again, it's stuff that I never had access to. Okay, we see it, the Army Transport Service arrived.
So there you go. You can see it.
Passengers, Hoboken.
Yep, and there's the Leviathan departing May 22nd, going to France. Here down here, you see Steve Zappa. I just happened to be looking at this before we got on, so it was handy. Steve Zappa, number, Private 131st Infantry Regiment, notified James Zappa, his father, in Dwight, Illinois. So
Now,
anybody who went overseas, you would have this.
that's next of kin or something, father, mother, whatever, sister?
That's
uncle?
next. Notify.
Uh,
And then the usual caveat with all this stuff, you're at the mercy of the transcribers and the clerks and the fellow authorities. But yeah,
okay.
that's another good source for and you could go into Army enlistment registers for the pre-World War I stuff that I've been looking at, and sometimes you just got to get creative, for place of birth or for names and things like that. So yeah, it's a lot of goofing around. I get some from I used to get some from the archives. A lot of them are closed now temporarily. So hopefully they're always going to be. I hate to see the backlog when that opens. So
Mhm.
Peter, I have a question for you, if you will.
yeah, sure.
I had 4 uncles that served in the military in the Second World War. 2 of them were killed. One was a parachuter and one was a flamethrower. And in 1942, my father, who was born in Italy, went downtown to naturalize. Does that mean automatically that he loses his Italian citizenship when you naturalize?
Yes, yeah. You have to actually renounce your previous allegiance.
Okay, and secondly, did you ever come across the name DeLulio? And would you be able to identify what region of Italy the DeLulio families. I know the Colosantes were from Abruzzo, but I would like to do some research on the DeLulios on that side of the family. Do you happen to know
The name is,
what province or what region?
I've heard the name, but I don't know boy, I'm sorry, I couldn't. Probably what I could do is get on here and do a search on Ancestry. I'll put that name in for like maybe the World War I draft registration. And
Okay,
that might,
thank you. Yeah.
and that might give me an idea.
Uh-huh.
It may be more than one. It may be more
Yeah,
than one
well,
place,
this
some
would
of the
be
names.
Alessandro DeLulio, Alessandro Jr. DeLulio.
D-I?
D-E.
D-I-L?
Well, I've seen
D-E.
it D-I, but D-E-L-U-L-I-O.
De Julio.
Yeah,
Maybe it's De Julio.
De Julio, yeah.
De Julio. D-E-I.
No, D-E-L.
D-E. De Leo. Maybe De Leo.
DeLulio?
DeLulio.
De
L-U-L-I-O?
Leo.
D-E-L-U-L-I-O.
L-I-O.
I think it's D-E-L-U-L-I-O.
Yeah,
I know there's a lot of DeLeos like in that area, but I don't know about a DeLulio. I haven't come across it offhand.
De Leo, no.
thank you.
You're welcome.
This has been really, this is Mike Herring. This has been really interesting. Were all of the soldiers from the Chicago area sent to France to fight? My wife's family is from an area in Italy that was very active in World War I.
Yeah, no, they were sent all over. They were. I have examples in Siberia, the Siberian Expeditionary Force, which maybe a lot of people don't know about. Kind of a godforsaken, thankless. They sent them out to Siberia. Well, and they were still out there when everybody's getting their welcome home parades. Also, they were in. There's some served in Italy. The regiment, the American were from the 83rd Division. One was peeled off and sent to Italy. It's from Ohio, but there were again people transferred. So you got to say, well, it was an Ohio draftee regiment. Well, people transferred in and out. So men ended up anywhere. So if he was a soldier, he could have ended up anywhere.
Any other questions, comments?
Peter, I have a question.
Yes.
Actually, my grandson here, who just got out of the military, has a question.
Oh, good.
When you mean the first division, you mean like the first infantry division, or was this a more broader spectrum?
No, it was called the first. It's the same division that they now call First Infantry Division.
Oh,
Then
yeah,
there were only infantry, so that the name infantry would have been superfluous. It was First Division, Second Division.
okay.
Then after
Exactly.
the war,
Wasn't
they-
that much.
same big red one, same unit.
Awesome. Yeah, because I was in Fort Riley for a couple of years.
Yep, that's the same one. And it was Pershing's favorite division, and some people didn't like that fact. I don't know. I guess because some of my relatives were in it, I favor it. So, but yeah, it was again very effective, but at the cost of a lot of anguish, a lot of blood.
I wanted to mention that Peter has been very helpful in my research, especially as you saw the name on the card was not spelled correctly, the Chipeta. Peter has done a lot, given me a lot of information. The Purple Heart that my grandfather received was due to Peter's efforts, and so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, we were able to get that paperwork to Christine so she could use it to go through the Veterans Administration to get, I think your father and your aunt
Yes,
were actually awarded these medals that Carmine had earned. So
actually it was my uncle. My father had passed away, but my uncle and my aunt had received it personally, so that was very nice. But that's it. We do have the letter from the Department of Defense indicating my grandfather was killed in action. And of course, a couple of months later, like Peter had said, they found that he was in France. And we received another letter, of course, from the Department of Defense indicating that he was alive. So it'd be very hard for my grandmother to see the first letter. And she
Christine,
was still in Italy, in Murano.
Christine, what was the impact of getting these awards on your family? How did it change your image, self-image, prestige in the community?
I think we may have lost her temporarily. Maybe she'll come back.
Christine?
Yes, I'm back. After so many years, especially
Oh, we lost it.
Yeah, she's has some connection issues. Hopefully connect.
Okay, we'll have to
There
go
we
on. Carla, you out there? You must have a question or comment?
I'm here. I don't really have a question, just a comment. I mean, I just think it's so fascinating. Also, like this is the second presentation that Dominic has done with the Espresso Hour, where we've gotten information on how to do this sort of archival research. And I would love to, try and maybe give some sort of assignment to my students moving forward, where they can, look up these kinds of things. So, how long have you been doing this, Peter? For
If you ever want to,
okay.
well, I started, maybe 20 something years ago. And I went to the library in Kenosha to look things up, Kenosha, Wisconsin, up there. And I saw the names, and I recognized some of the names. And I saw my grandfather's cousin. I said, I didn't know that. I had no idea he served in World War I. I don't think my grandfather knew.
Right.
Or cared or whatever. But so that got me started. And then I just kept going. I know how it is with researchers, and kept going. And I would be happy, Carla, and anyone else, if we want to do something like this, and I could step you through, or however you think might work. Because if people have, like the other gentleman was looking for a surname, you can actually do it. You can actually get somewhere, maybe more than you have, at least, through this. I mean, you got to pay for Ancestry.com, but it's, to me, a small price if you can, find what you're looking for.
Peter, did you use newspapers? And in my research on World War II, I noticed that the Army put out a lot of publicity about the soldiers and fed it to the local newspapers.
Yeah.
Was that going
same
on in
is true.
World War I too?
Yes, very much so. When it started from when they were called to be drafted, you'd have lists of men called, lists of men sent, and then you would have letters coming back. Here's a letter from Private so-and-so in the 1st Division. And then sadly, you had the casualty lists. It would be very important to see, to keep track and see whose neighbor, what happened. I think I did a little bit for this, but I was using newspapers.com. There's probably others. I don't know. But Kenosha didn't seem to be covered. Chicago probably is. So I need to get back into it. But I did find some information on that. I would like to find some personal stories, which is very difficult to find for Italian immigrants of this era, because they probably didn't write their memories down. Maybe they told them, I'm sure they did, but it's something that I covet. When I found that one for the man who had epilepsy, and then boom, he lost part of his finger before he even got in action. It was artillery shelling. He told about it, and I'm like, this is priceless. Here's a guy from Murano Marchesato, at least an Italian, who is telling what he went through and is giving his experience. So things like that I get excited about.
Are you interested in Italians in the Italian army in World War One?
Less so, probably because I have bitten off a lot with the Calabrians. I
Yeah.
got like 5,600 names of Calabrians. Cosenza, the most heavily mined, and then the others following. You know, and it's a lot of data, so it's hard to do any more than that.
And you're only focusing on Calabrians and Italians in general.
I'm interested in
When you
that
come across them, do
before.
you do anything?
I will occasionally. I'm working on something now. There was an Italian band in the 42nd Infantry Regiment in the Philippine insurrection. They recruited an Italian band. 17 of the members were Italian born, most from Southern, a lot from Campania, a few from Calabria. And I'm kind of working on that. But to me, it's fascinating that these men, they were professional musicians in the 1890s, and they had just come over only a couple of years here, and they want to be a bit, and they went to the Philippines, where they probably had only the vaguest idea that they were actually soldiers. So that to me is very interesting. So I'm working on that.
Yeah, there's a strong tradition of Italian musicians in the military. And I think that's
Yeah,
because
the Navy did that too.
my theory is that in Italian towns, because the band was so important, they gave free lessons to any kid who was likely to be any good. And so Italians tended to be musicians. And the military is always looking for musicians to play music while people go to their death. So, hey, it works out nicely. I had a cousin
And
who
a lot
ended
of these.
in Hawaii. Go ahead. I
Go ahead.
won't go into it. Anybody else?
May I ask
Okay.
a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
May I ask a
Yes, sir.
question? Some question. Okay. Oh, the presentation was very interesting. Complimenti. It's very,
Grazie.
very, very interesting. I ask. Do you know if there were conditions in order to be enrolled in the army at that time? I mean, to be literate, some or citizen, American citizen, or no?
Warm body.
No, you did not have to be literate. Some enemy aliens, some German aliens were actually drafted. They weren't supposed to be, but they were. A lot of them were then discharged. I think a lot of Italian aliens did not understand that they could be exempt, and they were then drafted. A lot of them joined willingly. But the whole idea of this illiteracy is fascinating because they had so many of these people that they started development battalions in a training base. They would take people who not only illiterate, but other issues, but a large chunk were immigrants who couldn't read or write English well. And they put them in these these development battalions, and they taught them English. They taught them citizenship. The idea was to get them fit to go into an actual tactical unit. But many of them, excuse me, didn't make that transition. But they did have these units, and a lot of Italians ended up in those units. I don't know what long-term effect they had, but many of them in there did become American citizens. So it was an Americanizing overall effect, but there were no requirements to speak English or whatever.
Oh, also, I know that at that time, the Italian administration encouraged the people to come back to Italy to serve in the army. You mentioned that before. You can have more information about this return back to Italy for many immigrants.
Yeah, I don't have that much more. I have read somewhere, and I'm sorry, I don't know which book. It's over there somewhere. 90,000, but that, if I remember correctly, that number wasn't cited. He didn't give a citation. I think it was Michael Musmano's book. But anyway, a lot of immigrants went back to Italy, and I think after the war, a lot of them returned.
Yeah.
Some of them were probably reservists and had to go back, but then, yeah. I don't have numbers, and I don't know how it was affected. Italian newspapers, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I can't see anybody on the screen that I have open now. Let me get, oh, I don't know. Just speak up if you have a question. Lou Corsino always has good questions or comments. Lou, are you there?
You're muted, Lou.
Everyone has permission to
Yeah,
control their own microphone.
There's Lou. Can you hear us, Lou?
Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah, let's hear for a comment, your reaction to the presentation.
I wonder to what, if I look at the underside of what you're saying, Peter, as opposed to the medals, were there problems of Italians going into the army in terms of either desertions or problematic, given all this sort of anti-Italianness that was happening in America at the time? And I think I think there were a lot of stereotypes about Italians as not being good war fighters, and somehow they're, Italians were lovers and not somehow connected to, I mean, were there problems in the Italians in terms of the opposite, in terms of not adjusting to war and in ways that would be different?
I've come across a few who deserted, and again, I was mostly looking at Calabrians, and a few who deserted, a few who had minor infractions. In other words, it didn't, stayed out past their leave and things like that. They're fairly minor. I mean, a lot of men had. I would never have that, but a lot of men had that kind of infraction.
Sure.
One man, another Chicago area guy, Peter Serpe, I think, actually kind of deserted. It was kind of weird. All I have is this little snippet of it, that he kind of went AWOL, sort of right in a break of the Meuse-Argonne offensive, and then came back. Well, deserting in the face of an enemy is frowned upon and is punishable by death, obviously. But in this case, he wasn't. He had a sentence, a general court martial, or maybe a summary court martial. They're different, but anyway, he had that. But he was okay. He continued to serve, and was discharged honorably. Another fellow who's born in Chicago, but of Italian parents, was in the Navy, and at the end of the war, for some reason, he just left. He went home, and he was at Great Lakes, which is just north of Chicago, of course. And there was a warrant out for his arrest years later, and I have the paperwork where the private investigator found him and said, "Hey, I found him. I need a warrant so I can bring him in." And then it later said, no, he has subsequently been given an honorable discharge because he didn't know. But anyway, I don't think it was out of the ordinary. I don't think it was any more pronounced than any other ethnic group, desertion or things like that.
Interesting. Yeah. Did you find people that were it'd be hard, that served in World War I and World War II? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. So
There's
that
a few. Yeah.
Okay.
Lucky.
I have some that started even before World War I and went into World War II.
Yeah.
I have one guy listed in the Navy in 1890. He's not Chicago, but I'm going to talk about him anyway. Listed in the Navy as a musician, became a bandmaster, and he would continue to re-enlist for each cruise. And a lot of Italian musicians did this. You could enlist for a specific cruise. Well, and then you get back, and then you unload your bags, and you look at the bulletin board. Oh, here's the USS Vermont is going on a cruise. I think I'll do that. And they accumulate enough time for retirement. And this guy served 30 years and was a bandmaster, and he retired, Navy retirement. So this is a way they parlayed their abilities to the best they could as these probably not illiterate immigrants, they're professional musicians, but immigrants, and they used what they could and cobbled together a career.
Interesting. We had a boarder in our house, my grandmother's house, who moved into my grandmother's house in 1920s, and he left in 1998. So he stayed there 70 years, and my grandparents have died since then. but he was in both. He was in World War I and World War II, and I think that would be. You'd almost need a medal for that, right? I would think that somehow having to go through that for 2 times would be.
Yeah, I haven't found too many, but a few, yeah.
Yeah, because you'd have to, the age would just have to hit right in particular ways, right?
Yeah, young for World War I and
Yes, right. And at
middle age
the
for
end,
World War II.
yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. I think this has been very illuminating to me for future research, and the information is all very good and the methods are very good. Thanks, everyone, and applause for Peter and his presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Very, very interesting. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter.
Congratulations.
maybe we should do a
Molto-
workshop,
molto-
Dominic, on our, doing.
Molto interessante.
Oh, grazie.
Yeah, I think we could use him and so, as well as some others in the classes.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Take care.
Lou?